Hey, welcome to Shep's Chat 503, last one for the chapter. We're going to get right into it, gender and civil rights. So women's role in politics, how it has changed over time. The first time that women start really getting actively involved in American politics in a legislative or forceful way instead of more of a Abigail Adams way, is when they're working on abolishing slavery. And in 1848, Lucretia Mott and Elizabeth Cady Stanton organized the Seneca Falls Convention, and they make a declaration of sentiments there. And they say, we hold these truths to be self-evident that all men, oh yeah, and women are created equal. So what do they want from this declaration of sentiments? They would like access to education and employment. They want marriage and divorce reform, and they want suffrage. And if you don't know, suffrage is the right to vote. So suffrage, the 15th Amendment is kind of a failure for women. They kind of thought that when the 15th Amendment passed, that it would involve women and that it would include them. And Minor v. Happersett, they say, nah, no. The 15th Amendment clearly states that based on your ethnicity, not your gender. So voting is still a state issue, and each state can then decide. So Susan B. Anthony and Elizabeth Cady Stanton then join together and create the National Women's Suffrage Association, and they try to press really hard for a constitutional amendment that would make a federal law that all women are allowed to vote. At the same time, Lucy Stone creates the American Women's Suffrage Association, and she tries to do this with constitutional amendments on a state-by-state basis. So in each state's constitution, she wants to change and have a policy made. So Lucy Stone starts making progress on individual states. Anthony and Stanton try to do it for the entire country. And some states do start allowing women to vote. We talked about the fact that Jeanette Rankin is elected as a U.S. House of Representatives member for the state of Wyoming, even before women have the right to vote throughout the nation. Wisconsin does not allow women to vote prior to the 19th Amendment. However, we are the first state to ratify the 19th Amendment, so there's something to be proud of. The 19th Amendment says the right of citizens of the United States to vote shall not be denied or abridged by the United States or by any state on account of sex. Congress shall have power to enforce this article by appropriate legislation. So, up until this time, women, no vote, just men. All right, in 1963, we get the feminine mystique. So this is going back in time with the 1919s, 1920s for suffrage. We're going to skip ahead to 1963 because now we've got the right to vote, and there's like 3 or 4 women in office, but we're asking ourselves, or women are supposed to be asking themselves, is this all there is to life? So that idea of Mrs. Brady on the Brady Bunch, or the Partridge Family, where the white mom who stays at home and takes care of her 8 kids, is that what she wants to do? And it leads to a second wave in the women's movement, and it comes up with this new idea of feminism. And feminism is the political, economic, and social equality for women and the gender conscious sufficient to mobilize women for change. So the other day I heard one of the students in class say, like, I'm not a feminist. Well, you are a feminist because I'm sure you want equality for women. You probably feel as if we already have equality. So in this case, feminism is something that you already believe exists. We already have equality. So you are a successful feminist. There are other feminists who believe that women do not have equality or that it is not right. In this case, they would be the more radical feminists from your guys' perspective, not everybody's. All right, so the Equal Rights Amendment, the ERA, starts in 1923, and it would have stated equality of rights under the law shall not be denied or abridged by the United States or by any state on account of sex. So we don't actually get a hearing on this until 1972, and then it falls short of the 38 states by 3. So we need 38 states. We can only get 35 of them to ratify it. You'll notice that Wisconsin does ratify the ERA, but our neighbors to the south, Illinois, do not. Could it still happen? Sure, the ERA amendment could potentially still pass. 96% of people in the United States believe that there should be a constitutional amendment that guarantees equal rights for women. Ironically, 72% of the people that live in the United States that were surveyed already believe that the Constitution includes this amendment. It does not. All right, so what's next? When the ERA fails, they have to try to come up with some new ideas for what they're going to do. In 1978, they amend the Civil Rights Act of 1964 to include protecting pregnant women. So you couldn't be fired from your job because you were pregnant. Then we get the Title IX of the Education Amendments, and you guys typically think of school sports when you hear this. And it does offer female access to sports in schools. So if you don't have a women's wrestling team, you might have to let women wrestle with the guys. if you're going to offer 3 male sports in the spring, then you kind of need to have 3 female sports in the spring. But it also makes it illegal to have all male programs. So women that want to get into the Green Berets, women that want to get into military training camps, they have to be allowed in as well. You cannot just have male programs anymore. Today, women, currently not on the front line, but super close to the front line in Afghanistan and Iraq, women have historically been kept back a little bit farther. In today's wars, we have put women as close as we can without saying they're on the front line. 18% of Congress is made up of women. Geraldine Ferraro was the first major party vice presidential nominee. Nancy Pelosi was the first female Speaker of the House. And Hillary Clinton was the first major party presidential nominee. Title VII of the Civil Rights Act affects women in the workplace. It prevents gender discrimination, and it protects against sexual harassment. So your company has the responsibility for making sure that you are not being sexually harassed. If you want to look at some issues with Fox News recently, some major, what was that weird guy's name? He's not very good looking. I don't know. The producer, can't remember his name right now. But there's a producer that just got in a ton of trouble for sexually harassing people. So you cannot say inappropriate, weird things, and your company has some liability for making sure that those things don't happen to you. In 1963, we get the Equal Pay Act, so equal pay for similar work. It does not mean that women have to get paid exactly the same. The idea is that there is occupational segregation. More women are nurses, more men are doctors. Doctors make more than nurses. So you have to take that into account. When there are instances of discrimination in pay, there's the Lilly Ledbetter Fair Pay Act, which says that legislation makes it so you can have a claim after a certain period of time. Prior to this, the Supreme Court case had said you have to make your claim within, I believe it's 120 days of the pay discrimination occurring. Well, women were working for years and years and not realizing they were being paid less than men, and then they had a very short time to claim it. The Lilly Ledbetter Fair Pay Act is legislation that was used to reverse a Supreme Court decision, and they made sure that women had the same rights to claim the back pay that they deserved when they were being paid unfairly because of their gender. All right, women are not the only other ones who are discriminated against. We also have young people and homosexuals. The 26th Amendment states the rights of citizens of the United States who are 18 years of age or older to vote shall not be denied or abridged by the United States or any state on account of age. Prior to this, each state was setting their minimum voting age laws. Now it is 18 years of age shall not be denied to vote. Does that mean one state could maybe change it to 16 one day? Sure. It doesn't say that you have to be 18. It says that those who are 18 years of age or older shall not be denied the right to vote. So if Wisconsin wanted to change it to 16, that would be a Wisconsin issue. All right, securing rights for people with disabilities. So in 1973, we have the Rehabilitation Act. In 1975, we have the Education for All Handicapped Children Act. And what that one is going to do is it's going to say, prior to this, we kind of been like putting kids in institutions or being like, oh, yeah, well, they're so handicapped that they don't really deserve an education. In 1975, we say, no, actually, all kids deserve an education. In 1978, the Architectural and Transportation Barriers Compliance Board is created, and that establishes that you have to have ramps and that buses have to make it so that handicapped people can get on there. And in 1990, we have the American with Disabilities Act, which is the strongest legislation for securing rights for people with disabilities. This states all public building and services have to be accessible. Employers must reasonably accommodate the needs of workers, and it determines what makes someone disabled. So in other words, it cannot be helped by medicine. So if you are bipolar, but it's checked by your medicine, well, you're not disabled. If you have diabetes, but you can take your insulin, you're not disabled. If you have epilepsy, but it's controlled by medication, once again, you are not disabled. If you'll notice in your textbook, one of the things that does make you disabled, alcoholism. Weird. Why is that? I don't know. I didn't really like that. All right, the rights of homosexuals, because, well, they have rights too, except for everything in your book is pretty much wrong and outdated. So there are some ideas that are important in there that they talk about. The Matthew Shepard Act, violence towards gays is now a hate crime. Matthew Shepard was a young man that was beaten, tortured, and murdered, and it was because he was gay, and the men that were accused of the crime could not be charged with a hate crime. Now they can be. Well, you can't go back in time, but if you beat somebody up and it is just because they are homosexual, that is now a hate crime. In Lawrence v. Texas, they decided that sodomy cannot be illegal, although several states still have sodomy laws on the books today. So in some states, it is still illegal to commit the act of sodomy. However, the Supreme Court says that it is not. DOMA is the Defense of Marriage Act, and that states that states did not have to respect the marriage licenses of gay couples. So DOMA is an outdated act because we now know that Obergefell v. Hodges in 2015 made it so that all people, regardless of their sexual orientation, could marry a consenting adult. So males can marry males, women can marry women, and all states have to respect those licenses. Prior to that, DOMA was the Defense of Marriage Act, and that said that states did not have to respect those licenses. All right, so what about the bathroom? All right, Wisconsin teen Ashton Whitaker sued to use the bathroom that he identified with, and he won. He said, I want to get to use the bathroom that I identify with. I no longer identify myself as a female, I identify myself as a male, and I'd like to go in the male bathroom. And in the circuit court, he won his case, and theoretically, we now have to allow people to use whatever bathroom they identify with. At Bigfoot High School, what we have done to try to circumvent this a little bit is we have created a gender neutral bathroom that says anybody can use this bathroom no matter what your gender is. All right, what you should review prior to your test or anything that you need to know the 13th, 14th, 15th, 19th, 24th, and 26th Amendments. There are several terms there that you should be aware of. There are a handful of court cases that you should be aware of. We also have several that were mandatory court cases for this chapter. And then official government acts. So there are tons of civil rights acts, there are tons of voting rights acts, the Equal Pay Acts. Have a decent idea of what these are. Very important. Any of these could show up on an AP test. So you need to know this information. If there is one of these that you do not feel comfortable with, let me know right away. I will go over it with you guys in class again. All right, there you go. We're all done. Thanks. Have a good weekend. Bye.